welcome to the Japanese with the Japanese belts, and I do not believe that there are any exceptions here. Actually, no, there are. The exceptions for the Japanese are the KI-102 in terms of their belts. KI-102 only has HE. The KI-45 only has HE, and I'm also going to discount the KI-45 Tei and Otsu. And the reason for this is, actually no, you know what, I'll go ahead and talk about these. The KI-45 Otsu and Tei have the same gun, and it is a 37mm. You only get 2 belts, default or armored target. Use default, that's it. It's either AP or HE, use HE only. These are, or actually even the Tei only has HE. So with the KI-45 Otsu, you get the choice between HE and AP. Use HE only, please. This thing is an absolute pile of garbage. You do not want to spend any time grinding on it if humanly possible. So yeah, just use HE if you ever find yourself having to fly that. And for a general rule, just don't. It's horrible. As far as, let's see, the Japanese do get a special kind of belt for the KI-45s. I think it's only in regards to the Ko and the Hai. Yeah, I don't think the Tei gets these belts. No, it doesn't. So the 45 Ko and the Hai are the only planes that I know of to get these belts, and the default belt is FI, 2HE, and an AP. Pretty decent belt for default 20mm. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. The Uni, you got 2HE and an API, or an APT. Once again, pretty decent. Ground target, you got 2 AP and an FI and an HE. Don't use this. This isn't a ground pounder. It's not. The tracers is all, you got APT and HE tracer. And then the stealth, you got 2 FI and 2 HE, and these are pretty good belts. So in terms of what I would recommend either stealth, uni, or default. Up to you, whichever one you want to use. Now, on to the absolutely fantastic stuff that the Japanese have on offer, and we're going to start with the machine guns. Now, the Type 89 machine gun that I blathered on a little bit about in the British video, well, that is these. You will only ever get the Type 89 at Tier 1, and the only difference between the Type 89 and the Type 97, which is this machine gun on the JA1N1 or on the Zero, is rate of fire. The belts are exactly the same, and the belts of them are exactly the same as on the Tier 1 British biplanes and the Wirraway. So just to go over it again, we got Tracer, API, Ball, or Tracer AI, Ball, 2 AP, and an Incendiary. Absolutely useless. The Uni is Tracer, AP, AI, AP. Absolutely useless again. The tracers are 3 tracers and an AP bullet. Once again, absolutely horrible. And the stealth is Incendiary, 3 AP, and an AI. Once again, absolutely useless, but probably the best belt that you'll get. Probably the best belt out of all 4. And by the way, something I should go ahead and mention is if you do actually want to go down the Japanese tech tree, 1, I highly recommend it, but 2, you'll be using those belts from the KI-10 all the way through to the N1K2. Now, before I discourage absolutely everybody, something I should mention is that the A7M2 is a bit of a break, but the N1K1 still uses these belts and these machine guns. The Zeros use them, all of the Zeros have them, the N1K1 has them, the J2M2 has them. The KI-43-1, actually, believe it or not, this thing starts off stock with two 30 caliber machine guns. I'm not kidding. Thankfully, you can have them switched for 50 cals, which you see there. But the 43-1 has those belts. The 44-1, the 61-1 Co. Yeah, it's almost everything has these machine guns. It's horrible. The next machine gun that you'll get access to is a 13.2 millimeter, and this is pretty good actually. The belt composition is almost exactly the same, as you can see, as the Russian machine guns, and the belts are the default. You got Tracer, 2 AP, and an IAI. Absolutely horrible, but, you know, could be worse. The Universal, you got 2 API and 2 IAI. Pretty good. Probably not the best you can use, but pretty good. Ground target ammo, you got 3 API and an IAI. Pretty good. That's actually one of the best belts that you can get access to with 50 cal machine guns, I'd say. And the stealth belt is 2 API and an IAI. Once again, pretty good. My recommendation is stealth or ground target. Just because generally with a machine gun what you want is as much API as humanly possible. Next we'll go on to the long barrel 20 millimeters. Now the Japanese have two different kinds of 20 millimeter. The first one is the one that you get on the Zero, or the A6M2. And you get them all the way up to the Mod 22. You get the long nose on the 22 Co. You also get the long nose on the J2M2, as you can see there. But they have different belts. So we're going to go over the long-barreled cannons first. And these are the Type 99 Model 2 cannons. And the belts for these, well, for the default belt, you get probably what is one of, actually no. This is the second worst 20 millimeter belt, default-wise, in the entire game. You get a tracer round, you get two FI, and an API. Now, one of the things that I should probably mention with regards to 20 millimeters is that why do you not want incendiaries with a 20 millimeter cannon? And the reason for that is, well, it's twofold. For one, it's ammunition. You're not going to ever have as much ammunition with a 20 millimeter as you will with a 50 cal. And another thing is rate of fire. The rate of fire of a 20 millimeter is always going to be lower than that of a machine gun. Or at least generally. I think the 13.2 Japanese machine gun has a lower rate of fire than the 20 millimeters, but that is the exception, not the rule. What you want with a cannon is you don't want it to, or rather, another thing that I should say is when you have a lot of incendiaries, what you're hoping for is a fire. And that is great for machine guns because you don't have any explosive in a machine gun bullet, or generally you don't, and having a lot of incendiaries with a high rate of fire gun is a very good thing. However, for one thing, this is a cannon, and for two, it doesn't have really the highest rate of fire. So having a lot of incendiaries in a 20 millimeter is extremely counterproductive. And that is one of the main problems with this belt, is that you have 3 incendiaries, one of which is an API, which is alright, but the 2 FIs are not the greatest. And then you got a tracer bullet, or a tracer shell. So this is really a pretty awful belt, all things considered. The next belt you get, when you finally slog your way through to the belt upgrade, which I highly recommend you do, and in fact, on any Axis plane, go for the 20 millimeter belts as soon as humanly possible. I don't care what you go for prior to it, but as soon as you can, get those belts. That's for Japan and Germany. And the Brits as well, because the British default belts are useless, and France also, since they have the same guns. But the first belt you'll get access to is Uni for the Japanese Type 99 Model 2. And Uni, you get 3 HE and an API. And this is a pretty good belt, all things considered. Doesn't have a whole lot of tracers, which is good for me. And you got a lot of high explosive, which is what you want with a 20 millimeter. Next, you get ground target ammo, which you should never throw into this thing. You got 4 API and 2 high explosive. Like I said, don't ever throw the ground target belts into a 0, ever. Your tracer belts are all, your next belt is the tracers, which are all high explosive. I personally don't use these things, but if you need them, go ahead. And then the stealth belt it's basically exactly the same as the Uni, except they shoved another API in there. These belts are pretty good. Not the best in the game, but yeah, they're pretty useful. They get the job done. As far as my recommendation, I would probably go with either Stealth or Uni, and in fact that's generally what I use. Stealth for arcade, Uni for realistic and sim. Or for sim, since I don't play realistic anymore. Next we're going to go to the 50 caliber machine guns. The 12.7 millimeters, I mean, but who cares? And yeah, that's the worst 50 cal belts in the game right there. No incendiaries whatsoever. You have 1 tracer, 3 ball, and an AP round. 0 incendiaries. This brings back so many memories. Your next belt, when you finally kick yourself to death enough to get the belt upgrade, is you get a little bit of remorse. You get an AP round, followed by a tracer, an IAI, a tracer, and an incendiary. Don't use this belt. It's horrible. Next, you get air targets, unfortunately, which are AP, tracer, and IAI. As far as effectiveness goes, I would say that air targets are not what these things should be used for. These things should be used for target practice. And then you get the extreme misfortune of having a tracer belt, which is literally all tracers. It's oh. I hope these belts are historically accurate, because if this is what the Japanese actually put into their airplanes, that's just how the hell did anybody get shot down by these things? And then for the stealth belts, we get 2 AP and 2 IAI, which are... This is the best belt for the 50 cals in the Japanese tech tree. And these are awful. These are useless. Oh my god, they are horrible. They really are absolutely atrocious. I cannot describe how horrible those belts are. Oh, it's just sad, really. um, Next, let's see. I think these actually have the same belt. No, they don't. Okay. Oh, I need to finish this. So the Ho 5, which is the Japanese Army variant of the 20mm cannon for the Japanese tree, which you get on first on the Ki-43-3 Otsu, and you get it all the way down. Hell, you get it on the Ki-84. So it goes from the Ki-43-3 all the way down to the Ki-84. So yeah, you're gonna get these things a lot. Let's see. I don't know if. Yep, you get it on that. You get it on that as well. Do you get it on this? Nope. That is the. Yeah, that's the Navy's cannon. And you get it on the Ki-102 as well. Okay. You get it on this. Nope. You get. Yeah. Okay. So. So this line all has the same cannons and machine guns. This line has all the same cannons and machine guns, with the only exception being that. At least I think. Ki-100, don't prove me wrong. Yep, didn't. Alright, good. And close enough for government work. So, Ho 5 cannon. Well, for the default belts, you get HE, AP, or HE practice, and an APT. This is absolutely atrocious in every way, shape, and form. Don't use it if you can possibly avoid it. Something I should mention, though, is that once you get up to stuff like the Ki-84s, once you get to the Ki-84 Hayate, because this thing has 30 millimeters, the 20 mils will become a tier 1 upgrade, so you can go ahead and get those right off the bat. Although I think for everything else they're tier 4 or tier 3. I mean, no, they're tier 2 for this. Okay. What about for the 84 Otsu? Tier 2. All right. So, if it has machine guns, then the 20mm belt will be a tier 3. If it has no extra armament, or if it's the 84 high, or if it has no extra armament, then the 20mm will be tier 2, and if it has the 30s, well, then it'll be tier 1. And for the 20mm belts, like I said, the default, you get HE, practice, and an APT. Absolutely horrible. Don't use it if you can possibly avoid it. For the universal rounds, you get HE, you get 2 HE and an APT. This is actually a pretty good belt. Would definitely recommend that. For the ground target, which you should never load, 2 APTs and an HE. And pretty useless. Tracer belts, which for the Ho 5, I don't know why you would ever use these. All APT, please don't use them. And then for the stealth, you get a little bit of remorse in the shape of 3 HE and a practice round. In all honesty, the only belts that you should ever deliberately load into this thing are stealth or uni. Yeah, get the belt upgrade and never look at these again. And then we come to the 30mm before we head on to the early Japanese cannon. And for the 30mm, the default belt, well, you get a practice round and then 3 HE. As far as default belts go, it's not bad. It could be better, it could be a hell of a lot worse. For uni, you get 3 HE, a practice tracer, and then 2 HE. I don't exactly know how effective that is, but I don't really want to find out. For ground targets, which once again you should never load, you get 2 practice tracers and a HE. For the tracer rounds, you get all HE, and for stealth, it's the reverse of default. You got 3 HE and then the practice at the end. My recommendation is either stealth, tracers, or default. Probably stealth and tracers are what I would recommend. And then we shall go to the early 20mm cannons, which are the Type 99 Model 1. And these are the snub-nosed 20mm that you get on the early Zeros. And what you get with these are, for the default belts, you get tracers and you get a tracer, 2 HE, and an API. For the default belt, which is pretty good. Definitely not the most useless belt in the world. Although, as you can see, there is much better. For the uni, you get 3 HE and an AP, which is pretty good. For the ground targets, you get 2 API, 2 AP, and then 2 HE, which is not great. And you should never load this belt, like I said for the 3rd time now. The tracer is once again all HE, and the stealth is 2 HE and 2 AP. As far as my recommendation goes, I would say either stealth, tracer, or uni. Take your pick, whatever you feel more comfortable with. And I believe that is all. 155 in the Type 5. Yeah, so the Type 5 cannon, which is the Navy's 30mm, and the HO 155 30mm have the same belts, as I just showed. And that then means that, I should probably look at the KI 109. KI 109 75mm gun, only Japanese plane that has one, and it gets a mix of, it's got one belt, its default belt, which is a mix of AP and HE, got an armored target belt, which is all HE, or all AP I mean, and then it's got a ground target belt, which is all HE, so there you go. Pretty straightforward. And that puts an end to the Japanese, and we'll come back with the Germans, finally.